Welcome to the Online College Students Report webinar presentation. We're doing this a little bit different this year. We did circulate the report, obviously. It's been out for a little while now, and we invited participants to submit questions. So what we're going to do today is talk a bit about the questions that are most pressing for colleges and universities based on the questions that you submitted to us as you were registering for the webinar. So first, just a little bit about us. I know we've got a number of people who are registering for one of our webinars for the first time, and welcome. We appreciate you joining us today. Education Dynamics is an organization that helps colleges and universities grow enrollments. We do that through a number of different services that we offer, whether that's through our marketing agency services, our contact center services, or is often the case through market research, which is what Carol Aslanian helps us head up. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. The research that we have recently conducted here. And if you'd like some more information about how we might be able to help you grow your enrollments, I invite you to reach out to either Carol or myself or another member of our team. Today's presenter, as I mentioned, is Carol Aslanian. Carol is our chief researcher, and she's been a leading authority in non-traditional and post-traditional higher education for a number of years. She's authored a number of reports and books, including the annual Online College Students Report, which we co-produce with Wiley Education. And she also recently authored a report on 2020 and beyond, attracting and engaging today's students. So as I mentioned, we asked for questions as you were registering for the webinar, and we received over 100 questions about today's online college students. This is just a small sample of them. Unfortunately, because we had such an outstanding response, we're not going to get to every single one of your questions today, but we're going to do the best that we can to cover as much information that's relevant to these questions as we possibly can. If for some reason you had a pressing question that we don't get to, please reach out to us. We're happy to set up an additional conversation. Someone from our team might have some other resources, or Carol might have some ideas on how we can address those questions or get you the information that you need. So what did we do with those 100 questions? What we did was we set them up into 4 different buckets, and that's how we organized today's session. So what we're going to do today is talk through the 4 different sections that we had, plus trends that we are seeing, because that was often asked, is what trends are we seeing in what's changing in online education. So first, we're going to talk about what the profile of an online student is today, what online students are seeking, online student engagement and support. How do we engage with these students? How do we make them feel part of our community? Marketing best practices. How do we reach out to these people? How do we attract them to our programs? And then finally, as I mentioned, a couple of trends that we are seeing in higher education in general and online education specifically. So the first section that we're going to talk about is, what is the profile of an online student? And some of the questions that we received were, why do students choose to study online? What changes within online college student population have occurred recently? How do online college students in 2020 compare to those in 2015? And an important distinction and topic that often comes up is, from how far are these students coming? And so we'll talk about the 100-mile rule, and whether that's really even a rule anymore today. So I'm going to turn it over to Carol.
Okay, thank you, Eric. And it's so good to be here with many old friends and others throughout the country who are interested in this online market. The first thing I want to say is, based on the latest data, you know that online learning was growing leaps and bounds before our pandemic. And now all the data show that it's going to grow even further. So we are in the right mode of education, and I hope today's findings helps you move on in serving the millions of students that want to learn online. Let me begin today with looking at what they want to study. First of all, I want to note that we do ask about certifications and other forms of credentialing, and still degrees sort of head the list. But I suspect next year when we report to you, you'll see much more in micro-credentialing and certificate programs and boot camps and other things, where I'm reading recently there's a surge of interest in people who want to get their education as fast as they can. But as of recent times, the area of interest are in degree study. And looking at this chart, you'll see that it's no news that it's business, 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 right? Both at the undergraduate and graduate degrees. But if you look at the undergraduate column, you'll notice that combining computers and IT and science and technology are almost up to 25%, which is getting closer and closer to business, as is in the graduate realm, where it's 24%. So in my opinion, the two leading topic areas that you need to concentrate on are business and the sciences and computers and IT. One other thing to note in graduate, which was a little bit of a surprise to us, is the 20% in education and teaching. So at the graduate level, you got about 3 topics to focus on, but the main business at the undergraduate level seems to be heading toward the sciences and business. Okay? Moving on, what was their career objective? Well, let's look at the total column right now. I want to start a new career to earn more money, money, money. I'm going to keep saying that word over and over again today. Or to start a new career aligned with my interests. I think this is not too much of a surprise, but the idea of income keeps coming up in so many of our questions. So the thing about this chart is your marketers, your people who are in the advertising aspect of your business and so forth, need to know what motivates these people. And the idea that they can find a new career, spend resources to get the credentials to start that new career, and do something more in their interest are key words and messages that your marketing people need to purvey, so that the individuals knows that at your institution, they can get what they need to move ahead with their careers and at the right salary levels. So these are important messages to send out. Okay? How far, and I know you're all interested in these data, how far is an online student willing to travel? Well, we're not too surprised anymore. After 9 years of doing this report, by the way, with 1,500 randomly selected individuals who actually did study fully online. By the way, I didn't give you a little blurb on methodology, but we do screen in 1,500 people who have studied online fully, are studying online fully, or plan to more recently. So we're not studying need, everybody. We're studying demand. These are what people are doing, not what they would like to do someday if they could. So looking at how far an online student is willing to travel, 32%, ladies and gentlemen, are traveling within 10 miles or less of where they live. If you add the next column, 18%, you're up to 40, almost half are within 15 miles. This is astonishing. And there's many, many good reasons for this. I'm asked over and over again, why is this getting to be, why is it shrinking? Well, first of all of you are doing it. 10 years ago, when many of the for-profits had command of this market, many of you institutions weren't offering the in-demand topics online, and now you are. And of course, you're nearby. They can get to you if they have to. Most important, you may be tied to the employers that are going to hire them, which is very important to them. And it's convenient, and people know you, and they can get recommendations, and their employers say, go there. So it's not surprising to us that this geography has gotten slimmer and slimmer. And you know, your major competition are your colleges and universities next door. So find out what they're doing and how they're attracting, and see what you can do better than they in attracting the majority of students who want to learn, you know, within 50, 100 miles. Have you visited, on the right-hand column, have you visited the college of interest? 70% have, which is a nice correlate, which I just thought of this morning, a nice correlate with the left-hand side, because since they're closer to you, they will visit you. And what a nice chance to embellish their thinking and their contact. And you'll see later, alumni giving is another priority for some of the colleges. And so they will visit if they can, and they're close enough to do so. So this is in supportive distance that you're able to be visited and contacted for information and services. And you'll see, you'll see shortly the major service they want is the Twitter area. Okay.
Carol,
Okay.
there was one question that came in during the registration process that we didn't specifically have on there about a recent study that came out that that this may not apply as much to graduate students. And so I was wondering if you have seen much about the change in the amount of distance that graduate students are willing to travel as opposed to undergraduate students, and what you think might lead to that, what programs where people might be more willing to travel.
Of course. If graduate students have more specialties, and they might have, you know, aside from business and computer technology, they may be in the arts, they may be specializing in the humanities, or I remember measuring the demand for a sustainability certificate at the graduate level. Well, there we surveyed the nation, because in this one little region in the Southwest, there wouldn't be enough people to mount that program. So boutique topics, niche topics will take graduate students further away. Probably that's true for undergraduate, but not as much as at the graduate level. So I would predict that graduate students will go farther to get the specific discipline they want, which may not be offered as efficiently online through a nearby institution. So if you're offering a topic at the graduate level, you should see who else is doing it online in your region and then nationwide, so you'll know whether you have a local competition that you got to deal with or go further.
So for example, even at the graduate level, an online MBA, for example, might not travel as far because it might not be as specific, whereas an online architecture program or something like that might be able to travel.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yes. That's why market data always helps. We've worked with many colleges that ask, you know, can we run a master's program in X, Y, or Z? And depending on the topic, we'll say, we'll study it in your region or we'll study it nationwide, because the demand has to be spread out if it's a unique topic. In terms of demographics, I guess the one thing I want to show you right now and point out is 20% of undergraduates, well, if you look at graduate students, what is it? 19%? Do I see that on the right-hand side? 19% of all students, undergraduate or graduate, are 18 to 24. Age, as you'll see, one of my big promotional topics, age doesn't predict the way we learn, and that 20% will grow, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to grow as a consequence of the pandemic. So the terms of older students, adult students, professional continuing ed students may not be as useful as you're approaching the total market as it once was, because look at the ages of these individuals. If you look at the median age is probably around 35, 37 in both sides. But that younger market, but look at the 55 and older market, by the way, and you'll see later that many of our learners are retired. So what is a 55? I can see people 55 or older saying, I got to get new skills to get that job enhancement, or I need new skills to meet the demands of that new employer who came in town. And they're still 55. And what I've been reading recently is people are going to be working a little bit longer than they expected. So that's not a market to ignore at the rate of 22%. So something to think about. The income level, the average is about the median is about 65,000 for undergraduates and 70,000 for graduates. So, you know, that's not too much higher than the average median. So these people don't have a lot of resources to give to supporting their education. And you'll see that becoming a major determinant as we move into some other data. They don't have a heck of a lot of extra resources to give to education, it seems to me. The employment status, well, they're employed full-time, half of them at the undergraduate level and nearly 70% at the graduate level. So I'm surprised. So the employed part-time and full-time at the undergraduate level is about 73%. Something makes me think that part-time employment is anticipating further education to move into full-time employment. But these people don't have a lot of spare time on their hand. They're looking for efficient, quick, get my degree or get my credential in time to move ahead or get more pay. So they're very busy people. Over to you, Eric.
I forgot to mention previously, if you do have questions as we're going along, we will be stopping throughout the session for questions. So after each one of the sections that we have identified, we'll stop and ask if you have any questions or address any questions that have come in through the QA chat. Carol, one question that came in was
Yes.
with respect to the distance. What about the national providers, those schools that are able to have a national presence? It seems like they are certainly able to continue to attract. Is there any reason why they're able to do that other schools may not? Or do you think that there is a preference if there's availability for schools to choose a local as opposed to a national in some cases?
I'm thinking a lot of the Phoenixes, the Southern New Hampshires, and the Purdues and the Arizonas as your national perspective. On the other hand, I still think your local institutions have an upper hand aside from, and I'll give you the aside from shortly, because they're in your area, they're tied to employers. In fact, if your institutions aren't tied to your area employers, you must do that. It was a very high activity earlier on in the decades, but now tying with employees is very important. Now let's take Purdue or an Arizona or Southern New Hampshire. Right, I think I just saw that University of Phoenix is calling out for $1 million scholarship awards. I hear that Southern New Hampshire has lowered their costs. Guess what? You'll see shortly, maybe we could have presented this a little bit earlier, but the cost of their education is a major determinant. So can a highly visible brand nationwide draw students away? Yes, in terms of cost. I think cost will make a big difference. I don't think that Purdue is attracting the numbers they had expected, and I would like to compare their costs, but I know that scholarship aid and lowering of tuition is what the big providers are doing now to make it a better sell. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think another point that was made by Marie is that there certainly is a significant amount of investment that goes into brand awareness and awareness campaigns and marketing, and it does take a significant investment on that side to continue to compete in that national landscape. So.
Yes, but you'll see that a lot of the for-profit national providers are really merging or being acquired by other institutions too. Some number of them are.
And we also received a question about if it would be possible to get copies of the slides and the data. Both the Online College Students Report and the presentation slides will be provided along with the recording. You should get an email either later today or tomorrow with a link to that, and you'll have all of those resources available for you.
Right.
Let's go ahead and move to the next section.
And Eric, if an institution is really interested in having a tailored presentation to their institution, I'm sure that I and other staff members could help do that sometime.
Okay, what online students are seeking? So we received questions about how are adult learners using online courses to complement their education throughout their lives, the top 5 things adults are looking for, and similar questions. So let's jump into that, Carol.
Okay, well, here we are. Well, what affects their enrollment decisions, folks, is namely the tuition. No, I'm sorry, look at the green box first. The school and program has it's called reputation. Following reputation is tuition. We've narrowed it down to 2 things, tuition and reputation. In my opinion, tuition will sort of overcome reputation, but on a survey like this, we're going to get slightly higher percentages in reputation, I think. But in my opinion, it's a close tie. So it's not only do you have to purvey through your advertisements and your marketing and your contacting, the fact that you are reputable and that and reputation to these people really mean, can I get the job I want when I finish? Can I increase my income when I finish? How well are you connected to the employment market? How are your alumni doing? All those questions are very important. But then again, there's always tuition. And you know that, look at their income levels. They're not making very much. I've dealt with a number of colleges recently where I would say to the institution, maybe you should lower your prices. Lower your prices. What institution has lowered their prices lately? I can't think of many. And the argument that you could give to your colleagues is that maybe we could increase volume if we cost less and make it up in volume. Think about that. I bet Southern New Hampshire thought about that when they reduced their income, their tuition rate recently. And surprisingly, over on the right, I think this chart we've seen in previous years, but it's at least a $500 scholarship award influences 26% of these people. That's amazing. So why not, as Phoenix just did, put aside some amount of money for scholarship aid to these online learners? I haven't seen that among many of my publics and privates, but look at what a $500 reward would yield. You know, I can go home and say to my husband or wife or son or daughter, look, I'm getting a scholarship for continuing and finishing my degree. Are online students willing to travel to campus? This is fascinating. 42% agree. Well, of course, if you're within 10, 15, 20 miles, you don't mind going on to campus. It might be nice to get a little feel in touch, maybe buy a book or two, or attend an event, or meet other alumni, all the things you think are associated with college. And you know, you got 65% who are in the market for this. So the closeness may also be influenced by the fact that they can feel and touch you, okay? And when they mention you to a neighbor, the neighbor knows who you are. When they say to their supervisor, I'm completing my certificate at, you will be recognized. Are they willing to travel? Okay, the next one. All right. 42% said my online education was worth the cost. Well, if you add agree and strongly agree, there's no question. You have advocates in your alumni. You have advocates in your current students. Use them to promote your programs. They, you know, 10 years ago, online education, oh my God, no way. And now, even after the pandemic, what do you think? I know a lot of us, and maybe it's that really younger traditional population that says, no, I want to feel in touch and I want the sororities and the fraternities. But the people we're touching with online education on the whole really believe that it is giving them what they need for the major purpose of getting a better job or increasing my salary or moving to something I really am interested in.
We have received a few questions here, Carol.
Okay.
I don't know if we'll have a lot of time to get into all of these, but for undergraduate students pursuing a bachelor's degree, would you expect a difference in marketability between programs with different core credit hour minimums? For example, a program that's 120 hours with 45 hours of required classes versus a similar one where there are 60 hours that are prescribed. Does that more flexibility and their ability to pick that path, does that impact the attractiveness? Is that something that you have previously studied or seen?
We have not studied that topic, to be honest, Eric. I really don't know. With this population, my guess is more flexibility is more appealing. But I don't have the hard data to underpin that.
Okay. Another question, just about the data. Is the data for both graduate and undergraduate students? And one thing that I would say, Carol, you can probably speak to this a little bit more, but in the report, in the full report, if you download the full report, it is segmented out between graduate and undergraduate online students pretty significantly and pretty consistently.
Right, and also they can go to the Education Dynamics website and find the earlier reports too if they're interested. Right, Eric?
Sure. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, we have done, this is our 9th year, and in January we'll be conducting our 10th survey.
Okay, and we're getting several student support questions here, so let's
go right on to that. Yeah.
So let's talk about student engagement and support. As I mentioned, we're receiving several questions today, so we're getting questions about how do you engage online students to make them feel part of the community? That seems to be a really big push, is how do we bring these students in? And how can we differentiate and create competitive advantages in an online world? So I'll let you take that.
Okay, engaging students. I think this next chart really says a lot. Did you use, this is called use, any of the following career services? And look at that. Let's say, yeah, let's look at the yes column. No, more than half used resume creation. Are you and your institution helping online students create effective resumes? You can ask yourself that question because at least 50%, 56% said they found that in the institution in which they were enrolled, so they used it. The second thing is working with a career advisor. Are they available at your institution for online students? What about job search? What about self-assessments? What incredible terms to use in attracting students. If you use this kind of marketing language, you would, appeal to a great number of people because at least half of them have used the service, okay? And that's because the no could be because it's not being offered to online students. So, but the ones who did shows a great need for, and especially after the pandemic with the turmoil in jobs and openings and industries coming and going, they're going to need your help. It's going to be something that I think institutions are much better at probably previously. But now it's a great new, I think, institutional arm to link closer to your area employment. The most valuable service, there you go, for those who did use it, was working with a career advisor. Wow. This average age 36, 38-year-old person really needs advice. Are you offering them the advice they can use for their primary motivation, to get a better job, to make more money, to do something I'm really interested in? And do you have just one, I'm sorry, I was just going to point to that second part, which I don't see very often at all, but a job search website by the school. Wow, wouldn't that be insistence? And job search assistance. I think you might need to get maybe with your chambers of commerce or the employment community or your board members being members of leading employers in your community would be extremely important in sending out the message that we know what our community is offering in terms of jobs and opportunities. Because I think most of the people we're talking about will learning with an institution within 50 or 70 miles obviously will be working with with an employer who is within that same range.
Carol, did the report talk at all about any academic support services, or are those elements that you've seen in other reports? Are there other things that might be of value to them?
We didn't ask it, but you know what? That could be a very good additional item for this year, academic services too, particularly now when we're getting a wider range of ability levels probably, and more people coming into online. The one great prediction is online learning is growing and growing. So we'll add that question this year, Eric.
Okay. The next section that we have here is marketing best practices. A lot of interest in how would I go about attracting these students? How do I engage with them? What are the key points and messages that these students find most valuable? Some of this I think has been discussed a little bit already, but let's jump into specifically how should we market to these students? Okay,
I think many of you have heard this from our past surveys, but we're always getting astonished about the number of schools they actually contact or seek information from about online. 43% only seek out one school. What does that mean? I don't know what your recruitment staff is like, but they certainly should be on the ball and within minutes be on that phone saying, what can we do to help you? Yes, I'm glad you found us. We are the right place. What is your interest? Do you want to change jobs? What it is, here's the degrees we have. 43% in short are in your hands. And if you're losing those students, because recently we've done some surveys about why do people inquire and apply but don't attend, and you'll be amazed at what's happening inside your institution that is causing that. But here again is 43%, they're in your pocket. If you go to 2 institutions, you got another 31%, which means you really have to be on the ball with these people because they're not fooling around. They've searched, they know what they want. If you don't serve them, they're gonna run right away to that second institution. I know at Education Dynamics we have a great contact center, which is more and more popular every day because we don't miss a call. We're right on top of it. You've got to be the same way. You've got to find out what they want, when they want it, and get back within minutes or hours. The social media. This is a question I developed by walking around the office and talking to all my millennials and talking about cord cutters, which is a new term to me back then. But let's see what social media service they use. Well, it's called on a daily basis, it's called Facebook, Facebook Messenger, and Instagram, okay? On a daily basis, folks. So what are you doing to promote yourself in these mediums? On the other side, at the graduate level, guess what? It's the first two, Facebook, Messenger, but then LinkedIn, okay? Because they're, it's got a little bit more in terms of professional interests and job seeking. But actually, no, I'm sorry, let me go back. It's Facebook, Messenger, and Instagram, the same three. We just ranked them according to the other. So the question to your advertising crowd or your marketing people, what are we doing on these mediums, on these services? This is very clear and very instructional. What to do with your marketing budget.
And I don't know if you recall, Carol, or not, but we got a question of whether TikTok was included among the options on the survey regarding social media. I don't believe that it was recorded as a social media platform.
It was not. Yeah, we probably will. You're right. And I'm not sure what the status of TikTok is these days, but we'll think about that. And these are the, we just finished, this is streaming media services. Okay, this is the streaming services. And on the undergraduate side, it's called YouTube, Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Pandora. Well, you got a lot of people. The top two, of course, YouTube and Netflix. And at the graduate level, it's YouTube and Netflix. So this is the hierarchy of usage. Now you've got to go back to your people and say, what are you doing on these mediums? What are we doing to convey the strength of our institution? Because they are using these sources a great deal. It's not the old email days.
And I would also point out that we recently did a couple of blog articles specifically about over-the-top advertising and marketing. I would highly recommend you go back and take a look at that. It's a two-part series, one that thoroughly describes OTT awareness marketing, and then the second one talks about some best practices. So if that's something that's of interest to you, certainly reach out to us or visit our blog. We've got some great resources there about OTT. I really think this is, as we've seen in terms of the number of cord cutters and so forth, this is certainly an area that's going to continue to grow.
Oh, absolutely. I think that column on the have used the services particularly, look at the bottom figures. They're very high. Maybe not everybody on a daily basis, but if we said once a week or twice a week, we would have huge numbers. Very important new ways to communicate. Well, one of the big questions was, what were the challenges in getting going? And guess what? Where are your people to help them with their completion of financial aid forms? That was the highest ranked item. Then how to pay for school and getting previous credits transferred. Guess what those three things mean? Money, 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 okay? They need it, they want it, and they want recognition of those prior credits at the undergraduate level, of course. But you've got to think, how do we help them? We don't say, okay, go off and get your own recommendations and past transcripts. You can do that on your own. Oh, no, no, no. The colleges I work with now all have services that do it for the applicant. In completing their financial aid forms, there are a lot of difficulties there. Do you have an aid that helps them do that? Because you know that financing, based on the previous data we've shown you, is critically important. How are we doing on time, Eric?
We're doing well. We've got a few slides here that we can get through, and then we can get to the trends and so forth.
Okay. So what influences them in selecting you over others? Guess what? Those online reviews. Do you know what the online review of your school is these days? And what can you do to make it even better than it is? Because it's the #1 source of information on where to select a school. Of course, that's the non-local influences, but you know that most of these institutions are in their backyard, so they're getting other things. But when it comes to the options we gave them, they still went to online reviews, even over friends' opinions and their employer. So one thing to do after this session is go and find out what the reviews are of your school. Direct mail from the school, wow, that comes fourth in line and all the way down. Where are you? You know what to do? Determine where your marketing budget is spent along these lines and see where it's not proportionate to influences. Beyond cost, other decision factors at play for the undergraduate? Well, it's not beyond cost. It's called cost of tuition and fees. Availability of the program. Of course, 31% might change, the other 70% might change their program if they like the institution enough and it's more economical for them to attend. But then length of time to completion is also important. You know, after all the studies we've done and the national reviews, it seems to me that undergraduate courses should be 6 to 8 weeks and graduate courses no more than 9 to 10. That's what my summary off the top of my thinking is right now. You know, 15, 14, 16-week courses are off the wall because time means money and time means how I can get to my desired job as fast as I can. And accepting prior credits is also important. And I think the same pattern holds down for the graduate. It's the cost. And then reputation, as you can see, rises higher in importance for graduate students. Graduate students like to say, I got my MBA from this place or that place, whereas undergraduates, you know, deal a lot more with the topic.
Okay, we didn't have any other questions on that section, but we covered many of them as we were going there. So a little bit more about online student support. What type of support do students need from faculty? What are the key questions and answers that students are looking for in a program?
Yeah, that's very good. I've just written down academic support from the staff, but also in terms of services. We will definitely move to that in our January version. If the program you wanted to enroll in was not available in an online format, would you, after a half say, I'll find the program at a different institution? Yeah, if you want to study psychology, you're going to want to study psychology. But look at the 29% who say, I'll enroll in the on-campus program at the same school. That, I think, has a lot to do with distance. In other words, they found the school in their relative geography that they want to attend. And since they're nearby than going to a national institution, if they want psychology, they might go on campus. But don't count on it. Okay, the 52% is pretty loud and clear. On the right-hand side, when deciding to go back to school, which of these were most important to you? And of course, the subject, I think the format, and then the school, the reputation of that school. But you know, subject does come first, but they're not going to give up online if that's the only way they need to do it. Most important fact is when they're deciding which school, well, guess what? No news, over half. Can I afford it? Can I afford it? Can I afford it? And then reputation. And then another affordability issue. Will you give me credit for my work or life experience? Because that means less time and less cost to get it over with and the quickest way. So it's speed and money. Looks like a lot of speed and money going on here. I'm wondering, okay, I was just going to say, I'm wondering about whether blended will be coming more in play. I think I read an article recently that blended education, because of the nearness, might gain a little bit more popularity than it has had, given the fact that people want a little bit of feel and touch. I think that's something for market research to answer for you.
Okay, and just a couple of trends that there were several questions, that we got about the trends. Is there a significant number of traditional 18 to 22-year-old students that are choosing full-time? Again, most of this is based on pre-pandemic surveys and so forth, but let's look at a few of the trends, and then we can talk about, after that, we can talk a bit about some of the trends that we're seeing after the pandemic here.
You want me to review these?
Yeah, these are yours.
Okay. Yeah, I think the data, preceding data would say, I love your school. I like the faculties. I know you're great, but God, I got to get this over with. What's the quick? These learners want, year-round instruction on short-length courses to get it over with. They don't want to spend 4 years for the degree. They don't want to spend 1 year for that certificate. The quickest path is a heavy sell factor. Age doesn't matter. No, we've got 20% under the age of 25. I think that will, in January, when we administer this again, I predict that will be higher. Cost, yes, is the main factor, as I've pointed out over and over again, but not the only. And for graduate students in particular, it's called reputation, okay? And finally, students' proximity to campus is continuing to contract. Right, I don't think it can contract anymore, but we'll see next year. I suppose after the pandemic, though, we'll see some more amazing patterns.
Okay, I don't know if we have any other comments or questions about the trends here, but we do have a few additional elements that we can share. This is based on a report that's actually going to be coming out tomorrow. It's our Beyond Benchmarks 2020 report. It's a look at the new landscape. And we pulled specifically out of that report some information that, that we have on recent enrollments and registrations for summer and how that impacts for spring. There's a lot more information in that report, and I encourage you to download that when it's available. But this is what we have seen as we looked at summer. Specifically, you will notice that the private for-profit 4-year schools and the public 2-year schools were very significantly hit by this, much more so than the private nonprofit and public 4-year institutions. So, you know, the 2-year schools, those first-year non-traditional students, early in their education process, they were certainly impacted much more significantly than the public 4 years, at least in the summer. The fall numbers obviously are not available yet, but I'm sure all of you are feeling on campus that there are some very significant changes that have happened on your campuses. So undergraduate certificates and associate's degrees obviously associated with public 2-year institutions. Those were down significantly, while all of the other programs were about even for most of them, with the exception of then, you know, with the exception of those 2-year institution type programs and certificate programs. The other thing that we looked at was what behavior are we seeing on in our marketing efforts. So are students continuing to research institutions? Are students continuing to fill out requests for inquiry? And we looked at this specifically from the beginning of the lockdown, the national lockdown in March, all the way up through August. And you can see initially, obviously, both in organic traffic and in the total number of pages that individuals visited. Initially, it went down. And then as people started to as people started to get more comfortable with the situation that we were in and started thinking about what they were going to do as their next steps, that traffic increased pretty significantly, pretty quickly for us. So the number of pages was about flat, but the number of people that were searching and coming in through organic traffic, certainly for us, we saw a bounce back throughout the summer. And then it took a little bit longer for us to see that the inquiry and conversion rate on those visitors come into the site. But so March and April, a little bit longer They were still in April, still maybe shopping and being stealth shoppers and so forth. But as May, June, and July came in, then that traffic started to turn into more requests for inquiries for us. So we have certainly seen over the last several months, specifically in the summer leading into the fall, that there were people that were interested in getting more information and considering going back to school. I imagine that some of that had to do with the unemployment rates and the fact that they realize that they may have to reskill or upskill in order to become competitive in the job market now. And some of it, I think, was people who were already considering going back to school and finally were able to feel a little bit more comfortable with making that move. So again, these are just a couple of the data points that we have in the Beyond Benchmarks report. Highly recommend that you download that when it's available tomorrow and take a look at a lot of the very interesting data that we have both pre and post pandemic in there. Okay, so we do have a few more minutes. It's about 1:45, and we tried to keep this to about 40 to 45 minutes. So this is the last part here. So we do have a few more questions. I'll go ahead and throw those out. Of course, Carol and I are happy to stick around and answer your questions, and would love to hear your insights. Again, a recording of the session will be available probably late today, more likely early tomorrow. You should see that. And on that page, you'll find a link to the full report, as well as other reports and resources that we have available, and the presentation notes here. So with that, please feel free to stick around, answer any questions that you might have, or ask any questions that you might have, and we'll go ahead and knock out a few more of these questions that we've received over the course of the session here.